Mhm.
Okay, we're going to get started. I'd like to introduce myself. First off, my name is Adriana Kimbrell, and I work for the California Rural Indian Health Board. I serve as the program coordinator for Project PaTHwAY, which is a grant funded by SAMHSA that focuses on HIV, viral hepatitis, and substance abuse prevention. And the majority of the people that will be on this call today are our partners that work in our different communities. Over the course of the 5-year project, we have worked with several different communities throughout the state, but the longstanding partners there have been 6. And the purpose of today's session and the 4-session series that we're providing this month is to offer an opportunity for our partners and other people interested in these topics to kind of get a wrap-up of tools and resources available so that when the project ends at the end of this month, that you'll have adequate information and resources and interest in keeping this project moving forward despite the fact that the subcontract funding will end. And yesterday we had our first presenter, which was Danielle Brewster, and she did a session on working effectively with Native youth. I think the session went extremely well. She shared some great stories about how to effectively and energetically work with young people and her history and some examples of how to do that and some new ideas of how to implement that at the local level. And today we're going to be joined by Robert Foley. He's the Chief Operating Officer of NAHB. He's also served as the primary trainer for this project over the past 5 years. As you know, we implement the Community Promise intervention, and Robert has worked in HIV prevention for many years, both in a regular job position working directly in HIV prevention, but then even after that, his dedication has allowed us to hire him as a consultant once a year to provide this 4-day training. And so through the course of the life of this grant, we've relied on his input and his feedback on how to implement the project in the proper way and to include all of the different components that are included in the intervention. So number one, we want to thank you for your contribution to our project over the 5-year time. And then also just, you know, we've formed a relationship during that time. And he's just a great resource, and he's a wonderful person to work with, very helpful and positive. And I'm excited for you all to learn from him, and I'll pass it off to you now at this point.
Thank you so much, Adriana. I have to just say right off the bat, it's been such a joy and an honor to work with CRIB, and especially with Adriana and with some of you who I actually have had the opportunity to meet. So I'm really happy to be here this afternoon to be talking about sustainability, and I hope that some of what I share and we talk about will help you, examine your projects and look at sustainability so that, even as subcontracts and subawards end at the end of this month, you guys can create a pathway, right, for yourself to continue. So I'm going to start sharing my screen.
If it's just what they're showing.
Okay. So, as Adriana said, my name is Robert Foley. I'm the Chief Program Officer for the National Indian Health Board. NIHB is a national Native nonprofit organization. We're headquartered in Washington, D.C. I'm blessed to be able to be living and working from home in Denver, Colorado. I love my mountains. I love outdoors. So I'm really, really happy that I work in a space and for a place that will allow me to stay here in Colorado. As the Chief Program Officer at NIHB, I oversee all of our 60+ programs, grants, contracts, cooperative agreements, and that spans a range of public health, congressional relations, and regulatory activities. That actually sits at the heart of NIHB's mission, is to advocate on behalf of all the federally recognized tribes to ensure the federal government enacts, upholds, and reinforces its trust responsibility to tribes. Especially as that trust responsibility relates to the health and well-being of tribal citizens. My personal background is in public health. I came to NIHB from the National Native American AIDS Prevention Center, where I worked for 7 years, specifically in HIV and AIDS. Before that, I was a trainer for a National HIV/STD Prevention Training Center. While at NIHB, I've been able to continue doing our HIV work through a small HIV grant, and partnerships. HIV is, as you all know, a very, very important yet under-prioritized issue in the Indian country. So I would like to thank all of you for working with CRIB, working with SAMHSA to ensure that this issue, this public health epidemic, remains on the radar and remains a priority for our tribal communities. So thank you. This is what I am hoping to cover through our time together. We will start with some welcome introductions. Then, how do we think about sustainability? You saw the title of the presentation, Planning for Sustainability During Uncertain Times. These times are more uncertain than normal, but I should have put uncertain in quotation marks because, to be honest with you, especially when we talk about HIV or other politically charged public health issues, every time is an uncertain time. We have no idea what funding is going to be made available. When there's a transition in the federal administration, in the federal Congress, in tribal leadership, all priorities get shuffled and moved around. And so it does seem that when we talk about HIV, hepatitis C, that all times are uncertain times. So I hope you keep that in the back of your mind as we move through the agenda. After we frame this issue of sustainability, then we're going to focus in on program sustainability and what that is and how we can talk about it and plan for it. And that's going to be our final component in the agenda, is planning. And we will have time at the end for some questions and answers. And then we will wrap up. Some quick housekeeping issues. Please feel free to keep yourselves on mute. That doesn't bother me. I understand it. If you don't want to, that's okay too. We live in a land of virtual connectivity at this point. So we are all used to hearing dogs bark, partners and children speak and run around and maybe cry and throw a tantrum or two. We're used to knocking at doors and doorbells. So all of that stuff doesn't bother me. You might even hear it on my end, right? I would like to ask, as much as you're comfortable, to have your camera on. That really helps me engage and interact with you. Not a requirement, not going to force it, not going to place anybody to that extent. But it does kind of help. If you need to take a break, take a break. Again, we're in a virtual space. Most of us are in our homes. If you need to stand up, stand up. If you need to walk around, walk around. If you need to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. Questions? Please, I'm going to try and keep this as comfortable. I've got a lot of information to share, and once I get started talking, sometimes it's hard to keep me quiet and shut me up. But I want to keep this comfortable. I want to keep it relaxed. So if you have questions, comments, or stories to share, please feel free to chime in. You can interrupt me verbally. That does not bother me at all. That's okay. You can put some questions in the chat box. I'm sharing my screen, and I've got full screen here, so I cannot see the chat box, but Adriana is going to help me. And you can always email me or Adriana afterwards as well with any questions, and I'm more than happy to follow up with you. But I definitely want to keep this casual and relaxed and would encourage you guys to ask questions as we go along. I'm hoping that by the end of our hour together, you'll be able to describe at least 3 domains of sustainability, describe 3 different kinds of sustainability, and describe at least 2 strategies for program-specific sustainability. We're going to cover some more, but this is kind of the low bar that we've set for this particular webinar. We are going to do some introductions. So this might be the only time you speak, so you're going to have to take yourselves off mute here in a second, but would like to hear from everybody, so I'm going to just put a voice with a name or a face. Would love to hear your name, please, or whatever you'd like to be called. I don't know you, so this is your opportunity. If you've always wanted to be Josefina, today's the day. I won't know any different. So please give me your name or what you'd like to be called, where you work, what you do there. And I know this is kind of a painful question to ask right now when most of us cannot travel, and most of us have been spending about 95% of our time in our houses or apartments. But put on that fantasy hat, and if you could go anywhere tomorrow, where would you go? What have you been dreaming about in our self-isolation quarantine world? So I'll go first, and then Just for the sake of the list, I've got a nice list here. I'll just kind of go down the list and have everybody introduce themselves one-on-one, so I'll call on you. So again, my name is Robert Foley. I work at the National Indian Health Board as the Chief Program Officer. I also do manage our HIV and hepatitis C portfolios there. A place that I want to visit, I love to travel. I really love traveling. And so this has been an especially hard year, knowing that I'm not going to get a vacation or get to visit any place new. But someplace I've always wanted to go, and please don't report this to any like government officer, but I've always wanted to go to Moscow. Like ever since 6th grade, I kept this, like we're supposed to draw a picture of someplace you want to go. And so I like drew like a picture of like buildings with like cupolas or onion domes. And like I didn't know what Moscow even looked like back then. That was the Cold War actually back then when I was in 6th grade. And it wasn't even allowed to go there, but I really, really want to go to Moscow. And I had a chance to go and put my deposit down and was going to go with friends on a tour group. And then the Moscow subway bombing happened. And I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was a terrorist attack and rice and gas was released in the Moscow subway. So the trip got canceled. So I'm, ooh, Moscow, need to go. Someday it'll happen. But Adriana, you're up.
Hello again. I'm Adriana Kimbrell. I work as the program coordinator for Project PaTHwAY at CRIB, and then I'm also transitioning into the program coordinator position for a CDC-funded project called Good Health and Wellness in Indian Country, and at CRIB, that is referred to as ACORNS. It's a very large project focused on addressing chronic disease and prevention. And so at this point, I'm juggling both. It's been interesting being at home and homeschooling, but I really appreciate all of you sharing today. And I have been dreaming since before quarantine to go back to Hawaii. It is just my favorite place, and it's a really perfect place for people to go back and relax and just recoup and start fresh. So hopefully my daughter and I will get to go there again soon.
Ooh, I hope for you too. Hawaii's lovely. All right, Linnell, you're up on my screen, so we'll go to you next.
You could have did me last.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm
Do you need
Linnell.
more time? Do you need more time to think about it?
No. Hi, I'm Linnell Cochran. I am from Fort Bidwell, California. I work with the Warner Mountain Indian Health. I am their office assistant. I wear many hats there with them. Most place I'd really like to go is to Rome. Other than that, I don't have really much more to say. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Linnell. And I love Italy. It is my favorite country in the world.
Yeah.
I've been twice. I've never been to Rome. Been in the north and the south, and
Rome.
I could roll out of bed every morning face first into a plate of pasta. I swear to goodness, I love it.
Right?
All right, so Eric, let's go to you next.
Okay, everybody. My name is Eric Ruiz. I work in Hoopa, Kamau Behavioral Health for Native Connections grant, and I think the place I'd probably want to go just to see it'd be Paris, France.
Beautiful. And you know, it's such a shame that, well, I shouldn't say that. Well, I'll say it's a shame we can't travel right now, because this is kind of the best time to go to these places because it's all empty. Like nobody's there. Like walk down, I can't speak French, but that famous road, the Champs-Élysées, right? Or go see the Eiffel Tower when there's no crowd or no line, and sit at the top of the Eiffel Tower and be like, I own this. This is my tower. That would be amazing. So good call, Eric. All right, Leticia. Or Leticia, I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
Yes, it's Leticia. Hi, everyone. My name is Leticia Gonzalez, and I'm from the Bishop Paiute tribe in Bishop, California, and I work at PaTHwAY Indian Health Project as the youth prevention worker. And I would have to agree with Adriana, because last year, this time, I was preparing to go to Hawaii, so that's all I keep thinking about. So I would definitely like to visit Hawaii again soon, hopefully.
And I actually looked at I priced some tickets out. I was kind of having this dream moment 2 nights ago, and I was like, well, I looked at my partner. I was like, Armand, we could go to LA for like $91 round trip. $91. And then he was like, oh, I mean, we can't. But I bet it's even cheap to get to Hawaii now.
That would be so nice.
I know, right?
Be the only one on the plane and everything else and be pampered. See?
Right? And so we decided to show on a YouTube videos like how to fly on a plane during the pandemic. Like we had a fantasy moment. Like we kind of just dreamt in our heads that we were going to go somewhere. And it was really good, solid like guidance. And just the filtration planes on systems are strong enough to filter out the coronavirus. So all in all, it's a fairly safe way to travel as long as you distance yourself from other people and wear masks and face shields and don't touch anything and, and all that other good stuff. So, all right. Thanks, Leticia. Nice to meet you. Amy. Amy, are you with us? Oh, there you go. You're off mute now.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Amy Orozco here from Tule River. I work for Behavioral Health under the Youth Tree Grant. I'm filling in right now for one of our staff members, Cassandra Gonzalez. I'm also the interim behavioral health manager right now. So where I would love to travel back to is Hawaii, like everyone else. I went there a few years ago for the ancestral run with our Pit River relatives. So I'd love to see the Black Sea again, or the Black Sand Beach and the sea turtles.
Oh, sea turtles. That would be amazing. They're so cute. Okay, the next on the list, I'm not sure. I've got WMTJ Townsend. I don't know. Is that William? I'm going to guess at a first name, but Mr. and Mrs. Townsend, you will be up next.
Hello, yes, this is Donna Townsend. I work at Warner Mountain Indian Health, clinic director. And my dream vacation is to Hawaii, and I used to try to plan that with my son. Now he's grown up, and now I have a granddaughter who I am trying to plan a dream vacation to Hawaii with when she's old enough. She's a baby right now. But in the meantime, I would like to go see the Grand Canyon. I've never been there, and that's where I want to go. But yeah, thank you, Mr. Foley, for taking the time to educate us. Oh,
hold on to that. In 1 hour, come and see if you still say thank you. You may be like, oh, Mr. Foley, please shut up.
I also have another staff member who's in the other room with Linnell, she does a lot of the Project PaTHwAY's volunteer work for us. Her and her kids participate quite a bit, so hopefully she'll be willing to introduce herself. Hello.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Leticia Castillo, and I am of here, Fort Bidwell. A dream spot for me would be to go to Australia. I just saw some really cool looking domes, like overlooking the ocean and the sunset, and they're clear, and you sit in them, you know, go, like they're like hotels or something. I just thought that looked really neat and someplace that not very many people have ever heard of, so that'd be someplace I'd like to go. I'm a single mother of 3. I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old. My older 2 are the ones mainly involved in this PaTHwAY program. So I talk to my kids a lot about like the other day, for instance, we went out picking plums, and I just told them like the stories and stuff that I was told, you know, as we're picking plums when I was little, you know, those kinds of things. either plums or it could be elderberries or willows. I take my kids out to go do these things that I was taken out to do when I was a child, and tell them little memories that I have or something that was told to me by my grandma or an aunt, you know. So I try to talk to my kids a lot. So and they are they're huge in my life. Everything with me revolves around my children. Jonna knows that. So, but thank you for allowing me to introduce myself, and look forward to listening to the rest of the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask real quick, is somebody dialing from 6195, the last 4 digits, 6195?
That is our clinic number, so we're both, it might be my line. This is Jonna from Warner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Jonna, how do you spell your name?
J-A-N-A.
J-A-N-N. J-A-N-A.
Yes.
There you go. There, that helps me a little bit. I just renamed you on the screen so I could tell. Okay. Well, thank you all for indulging me in that series of introductions. So we're going to be talking about sustainability. I want to be honest. Nobody's going to walk away from this webinar being an expert on sustainability. Okay. Really, we're looking at some high-level concepts, and we're going to suggest some strategies. These are not the end-all list of strategies that you can undertake for sustainability. Sustainability is a long-term activity, but I also know that when reality hits, we tend to think about it in the short term. So we're going to talk about it in both contexts. Both, if you have the luxury of thinking about sustainability early on at the beginning of a project or initiative, and what happens if it's, you've got a month left, 6 months left, like what can you do? I'm also going to be talking about sustainability in ways, how can I put this? I tend to be a pretty pragmatic and practical person. I understand reality. I've worked in the nonprofit space at I've worked at a university, I've worked at a hospital, I've worked at a nonprofit standalone entity, and I've been on the board of directors for a local nonprofit. So I feel like I've got my handle on that. So I understand when I talk about sustainability that sometimes it comes off like very ivory tower, like, oh, in the perfect world, this is what you should do. But then I understand what happens when it's, oh crap, we've got 2 months left. We didn't get the no cost extension. We have $20,000 left. What are we going to do? This is really important. So you're going to hear me talk about sustainability in ways that you probably haven't heard it addressed before. So I'm trying to be pretty realistic about some things. So I wanted to do a group brainstorm. And for this, I'm just going to ask you guys to take yourself off mute and just shout out. When I say sustainability, what do you think of? Like, what comes to your mind? And I'm going to write them down on my side. I'm not going to, we were trying to work out a whiteboard and I couldn't get it to work. So we're not going to freak out about that. But I would like just to hear you guys' your thoughts on, I say sustainability, what pops into your head?
Maintaining programmatic work.
Okay. Maintaining programmatic work.
Having a program after the grant funding is gone.
All right, having a program right after the grant funding is done.
Earth resources, clean water, clean air.
Okay, so kind of coming at sustainability from a climate perspective. I hear where you're coming from.
I would have to say everlasting resources.
Everlasting resources. Okay.
Long-term commitment.
Long-term commitment. All right, if anybody's afraid of commitment right now, you might well just hop off the webinar. I won't belabor this point. I think we can create a fairly long list of what comes to mind when we think about sustainability. For the sake of this webinar, we are going to be talking about programmatic sustainability, our work, our activities, the things we've produced for the betterment of the health and wellness of our community, our tribal members. So I yanked offline a variety of different definitions of sustainability. And there are some things that I wanted to kind of bring to light. Oh, sorry, I did not mean to go back. When we look at sustainability, continuation of project activities, right? I heard that in 2 of those comments that you guys made. Continuing to perform, maintaining. Sorry, these are not the best underlines. Right, but there's a general sense of continuation, right? That makes sense. Then after a grant expires, donor terminates, funding is over, all right? There's the other common thread. Continuation of something when support dissipates, right? So no matter what definition you look for, that's what we're going to be talking about. The continuation of something after the support dissipates. That support could be a number of different things. More oftentimes than not, we think of that support in terms of money and resources. Now the money and resources can come from a donor, could come from a governmental body, could come from in your internal budget, could come from, you know, any of a number of different funders. So this is one of the handouts that Adriana sent to you guys just before we started. And there are different domains of sustainability. This is to say that there are different areas in which you can work, do some things that will help sustain a program. When I say the term program, I'm referring to a set group of activities that you're doing that will seek to produce an outcome, right? And for our purposes, that outcome is some kind of behavior change or reduction in risk, or you know, the maintenance of the health of our people, right? So, or the people that you serve, or the people that I serve. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about outcomes. And so a program is a set of activities that you're doing to produce one of these outcomes. So you can engage in a number of different activities here in the realm of political support, right? Creating some policies, in the realm of funding stability, creating partnerships, looking at your capacity of your organization, department, program, or staff, evaluating your program, adapting your program, communications and marketing, or strategic planning. So these different domains of sustainability are a thread throughout the entire, presentation. I didn't organize the presentation around domains because that's not what I wanted to do, but you'll see, and we will revisit at the end, these domains, and we will have some strategies suggested in each one of these domains. And you'll see that these domains are applicable regardless of what you're trying to sustain. And that's actually how I organized this particular presentation, is thinking about what you want to sustain. But But like I said, you have a handout of these specifically, and I think that these are particularly good things to think about and plan around. Now, if you go in and start to think about sustainability, more oftentimes than not, what you're going to hear is a focus on organizational sustainability. Like if you go online, if you look at the toolkits that exist, it's going to be around organizational sustainability. And that's a concept of continuing an entire nonprofit entity. So how can we keep a nonprofit funded? How can we keep donors contributing? How can we keep our doors open? For our purposes, that's a little too high level. And when you focus on just organizational sustainability, you tend to overlook some of the smaller scale aspects of sustainability. And so we are going to peel away that layer of organizational, not pay much attention to that, and we're going to look at primarily program sustainability. You will see that, I mean, honestly, the strategies, activities, and skills are transferable between the two. So you could talk about organizational sustainability and take what you learn and apply that to program sustainability and vice versa as well. But today we're going to be talking about primarily program sustainability. So looking at the things that you are doing now or have been doing over the last 4 to 5 years, how can you continue, maintain, sustain those activities or other elements of your program? I mentioned a couple minutes ago that this particular presentation is really going to focus on what you want to sustain. And this is something we don't often talk about, but this is reality. I've been in an organization where a grant ends and we had to lay people off. You know, I've been in an organization where we get a new grant and guess what? We hire new people. But then the grant ends and then we lay them off again or, you know, transfer them. So when we talk about sustainability, we don't often talk about staff sustainability or staff continuity, but that's a key element of sustainability, especially when you work, one, in a small nonprofit entity and your nonprofit or your program or your department ends up like your family and you end up being close and work very close together. If you work in a small community or a small tribe, and employment is extremely important. And I'm just going to be honest there. So staff continuity and staff sustainability is important and something we need to talk about. And really that goal is just keeping your staff employed, keeping them gainfully employed, making sure that they have an income and that you're not just kind of tossing them out the door when a grant or a program ends. Issue continuity is something else that's also important. And this is ensuring that the bigger scale work that you're doing doesn't disappear. So you all have been working on HIV, hepatitis C, related comorbidities like substance use, potentially even violence. And I've read a number of different role model stories that you all have produced, and I think they're wonderful, by the way. So I know that you guys are touching on a lot of different issues that hit your community. So if the funding ends, how do you just make sure the issue just doesn't disappear? And that you don't end up, not to overuse a metaphor, like a helicopter, right? You come in, you land, and then you take off. You have an HIV program for 5 years, but you don't have funding, so the HIV focus goes away. The resources go away. The attention, the visibility goes away. Issue continuity or issue sustainability talks about what strategies can you implement to ensure that the issue doesn't completely fall off the radar, right? Isn't completely pushed so far down in the prioritization list that it disappears. Because when that happens, really, then you begin to roll back the clock and it would be as if your project never existed. So what can you do to make sure the issue remains visible and viable? Then program continuity, which is in relation to what most of the examples in the group brainstorm refer to, and it is what we will talk most about today, is you've got a program, you've been doing some wonderful activities, you've been connecting with people, you've been running groups, you've been producing materials, you've been writing stories, you're getting them out there. How can you keep elements of the program up and running, and continuous. So off the bat, you do need to ask yourself and have that honest conversation. We're going to talk more about hard questions asked a little bit later as well. What do we need? What do we want to sustain? Is this a matter like there's no more money? Money's not happening. It's not coming. We just want to make sure that we're treating our staff in a good way. They're as a member of our team, circle, and family. We want to make sure they've got jobs. We want to make sure HIV remains a viable issue, and the people just don't forget that, you know, they spent last 5 years talking about it. We raised awareness. We don't want the awareness to go away, right? Or is it we want to keep what we're doing going? So if indeed you want to look at staff, these are just some touchstone strategies that you might look at. And I'm going to address a little bit of this later as well, but capacity building is huge. Capacity building is huge. And again, staff continuity is just keeping your staff employed. Whether it's employed in your program, your division, your department, or, you know, even at the tribe or somewhere else, right? Could be anywhere, but you're just trying to keep someone employed, keep them supported. You want to build their capacity, and you can do that early on throughout the entire project period. Get them to attend conferences, get them to attend webinars, make them subject matter experts, and get them training on things that maybe aren't even topical, but might be like project management, group facilitation. You know, build up a solid skill set that ends up making them marketable. And then increase their visibility. Get them out there, have them interact with partners, have them interact with funders, have them help to found and continue to formulate collaborative relationships with other departments within the tribe, maybe with neighboring tribes, or within the health consortium, but increase their visibility. You know, give them a quote in the tribal newspaper on National Native HIV Awareness Day. It may come down to a time where you're actually shopping staff around other departments, where you are actually physically assisting them in constructing a resume and marketing their skills and speaking to other, you know, maybe coordinators and managers at other departments and selling their skill set. And I know I've done that, and it feels weird, but in the grand scheme of things, what you're doing is helping a person get a job. And in the nonprofit world where we work, and I think almost everybody here works for a tribe or a health consortium. So not take the term nonprofit in a loose context, if you will. We're all working on grant money, right? We're all working on soft money. So it is an unpredictable landscape. And so people that work on grant money understand that. I've worked on grant money for over 20 years, and I've been shopped around. And I actually appreciated it because it wasn't something I was able to do. I didn't have the connections, I didn't have the wherewithal, and I didn't know how. And so I had a manager do that for me. I was grateful I didn't have to leave the organization. I just had to move to a different project and learn a different skill set, a different topical expertise. And I was really grateful that that happened. And at the end of the day, it beefed up my resume so that when I did leave that organization, I had a better, well-rounded resume. So as managers and coordinators, that might need to happen. And it might also get to a place where you're providing job training and relocation support to a staff. And this isn't something that needs to happen. I should say this. But again, when we work in small communities, small tribes, where everybody knows everybody, I think the better that we can take care of our, our community members, our team members, members of our circle, however you guys define or shape yourselves, the better you are for it. And staff continuity, this becomes an issue or concern when the money is gone, right? When the discussions around program sustainability are not robust, when funding is not diversified, when funding is not secured, right? This is where you need to resort to these kinds of strategies. Now, the ones like capacity building, hope you guys can see my, my cursor, capacity building and staff visibility, these are things you do throughout the life of your project. Shopping staff around, job training, these are things that are kind of those more urgent last minute, like, uh-oh, we want to make sure someone's going to have a job. So this is the difference between kind of longer term planning and more crisis management. Can you guys think of any other strategies for staff continuity that you guys might engage in or you might have participated in? And you could just go off mute and just shout out anything you want if you guys have any ideas. Again, I can't see the chat box, so Adriana, if anything pops up in there, let me know.
No comments yet.
If you guys, okay. If you guys think of anything else, feel free to share. Issue continuity. Again, this is where you want to make sure that all the work you've been doing just doesn't disappear. Creating tribal organizational policies to help solidify some of the work that you have been doing. Things such as if you've been working on syringe service programs or syringe exchange, what kind of tribal policy can you create that will keep that issue embedded, right? Keep not necessarily the program up and running, but if it's a tribal resolution that passed in support of syringe services, right? You know, just a big stamp of approval from the tribe. Things like that help to keep the visibility and the viability of an issue alive. And maybe, especially in the case of policies, if funding becomes available again, you already have a foundation to re-enter that issue. So definitely think about tribal or organizational policies. That's a wonderful way to keep something alive, even if there's not active activities going on. Think about singular and or lasting events. And I tend to think about like, you know, National Native HIV Awareness Day, or a lot of awareness days. We have aging awareness days, HIV testing days. There are a lot of different awareness days that happen, or commemorative events that happen throughout the year that are not expensive, right, to engage in. You know, to do a Twitter blast or, you know, a Facebook event or an interview with 2 people on HIV on March 20th, which is National Native HIV Awareness Day. Things like that don't cost a lot of money, not resource intensive, and again, they keep the issue alive. Even if it's just for a flash in the pan once or twice a year, at the very least, the issue stays alive. Other things that you can do to help keep an issue alive, like minor fundraising events. You know, something like on somebody's birthday, instead of, you could go onto Facebook and have a donation set up to support HIV prevention at the tribe. You know, things like that. Again, they tend to be flash in the pans, but they're singular events, right? And if you have enough of them throughout a year, then the issue doesn't go away. What can you do to create a lasting presence in the community around that particular issue? You know, can you have a billboard go up? Can you have an art project go up? You know, on the side of that one wall that's just all brick, maybe it's empty right now. How about painting a mural or commission a local Native artist to do something, a wonderful original piece there where all the children come in and paint something. You know, maybe it's on HIV, maybe it's just on living and life. I've seen that happen and it's just been wonderfully successful. And then it sits there and it's visible for years, potentially years. You can also do the same thing with materials. You know, if you have a waiting room, you could produce a pamphlet, a brochure that's not dated, you know, fairly general. It's something that can be reproduced and put out and can sit in that waiting room, you know, for 1 or 2 years before, you know, it needs to be redone or something like that. Memorials or physical dedications, plaques, things of that nature, I think are also wonderful ways just to create a lasting physical presence, something that's physically visible. All right, I'm going to put this question out there. I'm okay with silence. That's all we get. We'll move on. But are there any other ideas that you guys could think to continue in the issue of visibility? And after this, we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about programs.
I know just like with the times we're in with COVID and everything, drive-through events have been very successful. Like we did in our community a Narcan drive-through, which had probably over like, I want to say over 250 people drive through, and we're like a very rural community. So that was a lot for us. And it's just like, I feel like people like it. It's more convenient than an actual event. Because I feel like if we had an actual event, there might be like 30 participants at most. But because it was a drive-through event and there was like a lot of different things offered for free, like meals and swag, like t-shirts and stuff, it really caught the attention of everyone. So just right now, in the times we're in, drive-through events are just really popular. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a great idea, Leticia. You're so right on. You know, especially for rural towns, I don't know if anybody has a fast food restaurant in their town, but you know, some of these rural tribal towns only have like, maybe they might be lucky to have 1 or 2 fast food restaurants, and everybody's driving through, right? You know, work with the manager. You'd be like, hey, you know, can you give a red ribbon? Like, here, we cut these out. Can you just give a red ribbon to every single person that comes to your drive-through? Things like that. Quick, inexpensive, cheap.
We had one other comment from Amy, and her comment was social media connection to the youth, Zoom how-to videos and webinar trainings.
Yep, I mean, so absolutely, if you have kind of that staff support to continue to do like webinar trainings and actively connect with youth, social media is wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And I will say for issue continuity, even if you're not funded to do HIV or Hep C work, other people are, and other tribal communities are, or other tribal entities and Native nonprofits are doing something. So you can always borrow or steal, whatever, you know, their resources, their materials, their posters, their brochures, and you can put it on your social media feed. And, you know, especially in Indian country, no one's adverse to sharing. All right, well, I'm going to move on and let's talk about program sustainability. I'm going to start with some earlier approaches. So in the grand scheme of things, we have to talk about sustainability because something has happened, right? You saw those definitions, and even in you guys' discussions, there was some kind of withdrawal support, right? Funding or donor support. That might be external. It might be an actual funder, like, you know, a government grant might be ending, or a private funder might be withdrawing their support. Then also it could be internal, like so the department might be reprioritizing things, or the tribal council might be withdrawing some support. That happens. It could be a withdrawal of community support. This could happen, you know, I've seen this happen many times. You know, if there was a minor HIV outbreak or an STI outbreak in the community, then people might be like, oh, what you're doing is not working. We don't support this anymore. This is ridiculous. I've seen it happen. If there's a shift in like the tribal clinic leadership, you know, and they have different views on different preventative activities or screening activities, I've seen it happen. Or the community might just reprioritize. This has happened this year, right? I've seen, and rightfully so, I just want to admit, we're in a pandemic right now. People that used to be doing HIV prevention, people that used to be doing climate health prevention or climate health and prevention work are now doing COVID response, right? So there's been a shift, all right? And that is a natural part, you know, of our community-based work. There might be staff turnover or departure. You know, that could be massive, it might be singular, it might be that one person that's been the HIV champion for years, that one singular person, and they've moved on, you know, for whatever reason. And because of that, it all falls apart. There's no one else to turn to. So there's a number of different causes, but all of these spark the conversations around sustainability. The earlier you can talk about program sustainability, the better. This should happen from day one. Literally day one, before you get the grant, you should write sustainability activities into your work plan. And I think you'll see your funder wants you to do that, even if it's not in a grant application or a NOFO. Your funder, whoever they are, whether they be CRIB, whether they be SAMHSA, CDC, the tribe, they want to see sustainability. So write it into your work plan. And you don't have to, and you'll see as I continue to talk, a work plan activity doesn't need to say, in order to sustain our project after the grant ends, we will do this. You don't need to do that, right? You can do conference presentations. You can provide training to your staff. You can create a marketing plan for your activities. All of those are sustainability activities, but they're also program activities. So they walk hand in hand. And I do suggest going back and looking at those 8 domains of sustainability, and you'll see that you can write program activities, which are sustainability activities for each one of those. So some early activities that I suggest starting from day one: build staff capacity and expertise. Turn your staff into subject matter experts. And then let everybody in the world know that they are subject matter experts. When you do that, then you're helping with staff continuity, you're helping with issue continuity, and you're helping with program sustainability. All three of those areas of sustainability that I just touched on. When you make your staff experts, they become marketable, right? They can beef up their resume, they can speak intelligently, they can do the work, right? That means other people will hire them to do that work, right? In essence, when you provide them the skill set to do program management, outreach, facilitate groups, do blood draws, conduct testing, all of that good stuff, then you've created a whole different skill set that they can bring forward with them. If you've trained somebody up and made them an HIV subject matter expert, they're going to take that with them for the rest of their public health career, the rest of their life, right? So you've helped issue continuity. And you've obviously helped program sustainability, because if you end up writing a grant, you can now write up that person as a subject matter expert in that next grant application. And funders love that. They love to see existing staff expertise, existing staff capability and capacity. So this is an important thing. We call it staff development. We call it a variety of things. Write it into your work plan. Budget monies to send staff to trainings and conferences. And create a marketing communication plan. Plan on telling the story of your programs. You guys have been writing role model stories, right? So in essence, you've already been rolling stories out. But what you need to do is roll those stories, not your role model stories, but other stories of success out to the larger mainstream community, maybe the community that you weren't seeking to reach with your role model stories. This helps to build local support, potentially national support as well if you create a national communications plan. But you can use social media for that. You can use your travel newspapers for that. You can use radio for that. And use your funders for that. Tell your funders. And as part of your marketing communications plan, get to these conferences. I know it sounds horrible, but I'm talking about native conferences and non-native conferences. That's where you're going to be able to connect and schmooze and share. Do a workshop, share your best practices, use that as part of your marketing plan, because what you're actually doing is not just disseminating the good work you've done, you're marketing what you've done. And all it takes is one funder to sit in that audience and be like, you know what, we need to talk. Really liked what you did. And I know that sounds kind of pie in the sky and like, ooh, that chance that that'll happen. It actually happens all the time. It happens all the time. So as part of that marketing communications plan, share your stories and get out there and be visible. That visibility can be at the local level, and that helps to build local support, right? I mentioned sustainability can wither when we lose community support, whether that's reprioritization or something has happened. But if you can build program visibility early, you can build that local support, which is really important. Especially if a community hears a program's going to go away, they can rally and help to bring that back. This is no different than, like, I don't know, a TV show goes off NBC and there's a petition all of a sudden, woo, and then Netflix is like, wow, it's really popular, and Netflix picks it up. Again, that happens all the time. So build that local, regional support, and you can do that by doing webinars, hosting town hall meetings, hosting local events, not just for members of your target population, but for the broader community at large. I talked about conference presentations. I talked about, well, not necessarily, but attend meetings, attend convenings. Really, you want to be front and center. And so, you know, if the state has an HIV planning group or the county does, get on it, right? And help raise the awareness of, like, non-tribal entities or individuals that this work is happening in Indian country. And it's good work, it's valuable work, and it needs to be supported, right? So, and it's not just enough to attend the meetings, but to be engaged, to talk. I'm going to credit my partner, Armand, on this. He says, every single webinar I'm on, I ask at least one question. Or every meeting I attend, I ask one question. Doing that increases your visibility, and it lets people know who you are, that you're engaged, you're interested, and you're knowledgeable, right? And that over time helps to build the reputation of your program. And that reputation goes a long way. And it's an informal way of marketing what you're doing. Talked about building staff capacity. Definitely build up their expertise on the topic or issue you're addressing, whether that's HIV, Hep C, intimate partner violence, drug and alcohol abuse, COVID. You know, make them subject matter experts. But also don't ignore these other ancillary skills that help them implement activities. So budgeting, grant writing, project management, program management, supervising staff, writing work plans, all of these kind of skill sets that sometimes we take for granted. Train your staff up on this. Make sure that they have that skill set well developed. And overlap staff responsibilities. Everybody doesn't need to duplicate, but at least some minor overlap is very, very healthy. And that helps if you ever encounter a staff departure or turnover. So promote mentoring and staff development, and this is an internal practice. So if you've got that champion, get him or her to mentor somebody else, right? It helps to build team and staff cohesiveness, but it also ensures that there's not a single person that is the holder of all knowledge. Up to now, I've avoided talking about money, all right? Because sustainability doesn't always have to be about money. That tends to be our default. I mean, it really does. But I've tried to use the word resources and support. But I will turn now to money, right? When a grant ends, money ends, all right? And the support in this case would be money or funding. So from day one, you should really think about diversifying your funding. Now, that's pie in the sky. That's ideal. What's real is, you know, give it a while, give it 6 months, give it a year, all right? But don't let that linger. Don't put off looking for additional support. Now, I know reality. Not everybody's got grant writers on staff. Not everybody has that expertise. Not everybody has those connections or networking capability. But somebody does. So I would say, you know, if you've got a 3-year project, 6 months into year one, start thinking about looking for other funding sources. And if you don't have those connections, you've got a wonderful resource at CRIB, and CRIB is connected into a wonderful national network. Adriana is connected to a wonderful national network. I've seen her at many national conferences. So you've got resources, even if you don't know you do, and you've got resources. These are people that can help you brainstorm about what that exploration looks like so early on, and help you establish goals for diversifying your funding stream so early. So look at public funders like governmental entities, look at private funders like foundations, That includes like those big national foundations, those local foundations, and tribal foundations. And I know you guys, just in California, has some wonderfully generous tribal foundations who have a grant application process that's very accessible. I would say I've written for probably 4 different California tribal foundation grants, and I found them very approachable. I really appreciated it. You know what? So that's grant funding, and that's kind of our gold star. We want that grant funding, and I say go for it early. You can also host fundraisers. There's nothing wrong with that. Host fundraisers, host them early, host them often. Even if you raise $500 here or there, all of that, especially over the course of a longer grant, builds up. You can also charge for services. Now, I'm going to say this is possible. I don't know what kind of financial systems in which you guys are all working. Sometimes receiving dollars can be difficult. So take this with a grain of salt. But charging for a training, I'll tell you what happens all the time. And NIHB, we get approached to train non-native entities on how to work with tribes all the time. So sometimes we just say, you know what, yeah, we'll do it, but we can't do it for free. And so we'll charge a little bit of money and then just put that into our bank account and be happy with that. That's just an example, but you guys could do the same thing, just to build up a little bit of unrestricted revenue for your project. And especially if last minute sustainability becomes an issue, then tapping into that little bucket of money might be very, very helpful. And talk to tribal council. Now I put this particular bullet point under funding streams because it is not impossible to get an HIV program written into a tribal budget. I've seen it at large tribes, I've seen it at small tribes. And so, and freeing the program from the shackles, if you will, of soft money, of grant money, of report writing, of grant writing, of things of that nature. So I personally think that is something we should all strive for, is getting written into a tribal health budget. And so talk to your tribal council, get a champion on council, and make sure you get it early into your funding stream, right? Budgets are written well a year in advance of when they're adopted by the tribe. So this is a longer term effort. And engaging in these other activities will help convince tribal council of the value of your program. Create partnerships. And I know sometimes tribal programs might be wary of creating partnerships or working outside of the tribe. Some are okay, some are very comfortable. Some are like, you know what, we're working with the local health department, we're working with an aid service organization in the neighboring town, and they're comfortable doing so. But I also know that a lot of tribes are just, are insular. Sometimes that's geographic, sometimes that's due to a poor history of relationships, or mistreatment or mistrust. So to whatever extent possible and comfortable, partnerships should be fostered. That doing so allows you to share expenses, maybe share facilities, share staff, share resources, helps ease your budget and your financial burden, and maximizes your exposure. Then, should an emergency sustainability issue arise, like, oh my gosh, we're going to lose our funding, you know what, you have a partnership, and maybe that can work to your advantage. Maybe some of your staff can now go work there and keep that program up and running. Or maybe you can't do all of your program activities, but because you've been sharing expenses, facilities, and resources, maybe that partner can keep some element up and running, or maybe they can absorb some of it. Just as an example. Creating partnerships creates cross-training opportunities, which help to build staff capacity, and creates a sense of shared ownership, especially if that partnership is within the tribe. And so there was a tribe in the Great Lakes region I've worked with for many years, and they were creating a syringe service program. And after about 3 years, they decided to partner with the tribal police department. Now, opioid use, drug use, police, those are 2 realms that don't often mix very well. But in this case, they'd been up and running for so long. They were very visible. They had spent a lot of time sharing their success stories. The police department And the chief of police was very open to talking, like, yes, please, you've reached communities that we can't reach. You have created relationships that we want. And so it created a shared sense of ownership, and that was all internal within the tribe. And tribal police department are internally funded by the tribes, you know. So that's also a really, really wonderful inroad, right, for longer sustainability goals, right? If you can get your tribal police department to adopt some of the activities that you're doing, and then your grant goes away, well, guess what? You now have a whole department that's tribally funded, that likes what you're doing, believes in what you're doing, has seen it successful, and is doing some activities themselves, right? So it's a wonderful inroad for sustainability. And then evaluate, 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 evaluate. I love evaluation. I really love evaluation. You should collect data on how effective your program is. And you should do that from day one. Figure out what you're doing, why it's working, and what difference you're making. Write it down, write reports on it, send it to your funder, that's all fine and good, but share it more widely. Share it with your community, share it with your tribal council, share it with your health director, share it with your health council, whoever. But this helps to build that support. Then if you need to write another grant, you've got this bucket of information that says, we've done it, we have the capacity, we know what we're doing, right? If you need to market yourself or your staff, you've got this bucket of information and data to draw from. Also, look at customer satisfaction. Make sure you collect data from the people you're serving and get them to actually say, hey, the work they're doing is wonderful. We loved it as a community. And again, that speaks to community buy-in. And I know I'm coming up here on the end, so I'm going to speak even faster than I did before. But I said I would revisit this idea of putting all of these strategies into your work plan. I don't care who's funding you, write it into your work plan. Write into your work plan that you will capture success stories and share them. Write into your work plan that you will attend local or national or regional conferences. Write into your work plan that you will host webinars. Write into your work plan that you will meet with tribal council. Write into your work plan that you'll do community and town hall events. All of these, as activities of your project, are inherently sustainable activities, or sustainability activities, excuse me. So let's say you're in that crisis mode. So everything I just covered are those kind of longer term, these should happen over the span of 1, 2, 3 years, right from the get-go of your project initiation. Let's say you're in crisis mode. Things, you know, you've got 6 months left in your project and you're in the oh crap mode, right? Oh my goodness, you know, SAMHSA just told us that there's not going to be another competitive cycle, that this funding is dried up, it's not going to happen, it's not going to be here for another 5 years. This leads to a very different set of discussions. And some of these are very difficult to have, right? But first, you should not make an assumption, and this sounds horrible to say, and I apologize for saying it, but I said I was going to be real. Don't make an assumption that your program should be sustained. Don't make that assumption. You should do an inquiry. You should explore, you should figure out if the project should be sustained. If not the entire project or program, what elements? But don't make that assumption, all right, yourself. So this was also, these questions were also on the handout, one of the handouts that Adriana sent to you. So I'm going to cover them quickly, but you should do a rapid like self-assessment, really, and list out on a very high level, what are you seeking to address? Is it HIV? Who's your priority population? Who are you trying to reach? Is it youth? Is it, you know, elders? Is it the LGBT population? Is it incarcerated individuals? And then what activities are you doing to reach them and produce change within that population? As a subset, what's been most successful in producing that change? What change have you produced? And what products have you produced? And those are the last 2 bullet points. So write that down, record that. Now you need to ask some questions about the community. Does your community need, in this case, the program and or services? Forget the healthy homes, but you can plug anything into that. Does your community need HIV program or services? Does your community need syringe service or syringe exchange program or services? And does the community value the program and services you have up and running? And to get these, you probably need to ask members of the community. And then internally within your own department or health department or consortium, does this program align with any kind of new or current strategic plan? If so, it becomes instantly more marketable. If not, it may not be sustainable, and leadership may not have an interest in sustaining it. Again, difficult discussions to have. Does the tribe or department want to sustain the program? Or is the team just like, I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm tired. I'm burnt out. You know, I've worked in STD clinic 10 years and it's the same people coming in, repeat offender. I don't feel like I'm making any change. You know, this is reality. Does the tribe department team, do they want it to keep going? And if the answer is no, maybe there's just a part of it they like. They're like, I'm tired of running weekly youth groups, but I love going out on Friday nights to the club, you know, and handing out condoms. That part is fun. So if they don't want to sustain the program, are there certain elements that have more favor than others? Do the evaluation results demonstrate that you're making a difference? Collect that data, right? That's important. And what parts of the program are making the biggest difference? Look to others. This is an important part of sustainability. Look for other programs or departments within the tribe or org, and look for any kind of overlap that might exist, because that overlap is a chance to have a project either absorbed, adapted, or taken over by another department or program. Again, hard questions, but we're in the oh crap phase, right, of sustainability planning. We're in the we don't have a lot of time. So look for overlap in things like issue population, activities, outcomes, and outputs. For example, if you're running an HIV program and the tribe has a teen pregnancy prevention program, there's an obvious overlap in issues, all right? There's an obvious overlap. I mean, we're talking about sex, we're talking about condom and condomless sex. Or, you know, you might call it high-risk sex or, you know, whatever you would call that, but there's an issue overlap here. So potentially you could take your HIV program and some of those activities, go to the teen pregnancy prevention program that maybe it's got another 3 years of funding and say, hey, we've got some staff, we've got some activities, this is what we've been doing, it's coming to a close. What do you think about maybe taking some of this on? All right, and so there's an opportunity for staff, issue, and program sustainability. Population overlap. You've got your HIV prevention program. The tribe's got a smoking cessation program. You know, maybe you guys are all working with youth. Maybe you're all working with the LGBT community. Maybe you're working with incarcerated populations. Maybe there's an overlap in the people you're serving. So again, there's another opportunity there. Deal with HIV and Hep C, right? Maybe the activity, and this is activity overlap, maybe the activity is all about injection drug use and syringe service exchange. Maybe it's about conducting outreach to vulnerable populations, but maybe you guys are doing similar activities. And so the HCV program might be willing to absorb or adapt some of the things you're doing, or absorb some of your staff or materials to keep both staff, well, all three, staff, issue, and program alive. And outcome overlap. You've got an HIV program, you've got a fathership program. Maybe the outcome you're trying to produce here is an increase in partner communication, right? Maybe in the HIV program, you're trying to teach people to talk about safe sex, but in the fathership program, they're trying to teach fathers how to talk to their female partners, you know, about, you know, parenting skills or whatever. But you're trying to increase partner communication and efficacy. So, you know, what can you share? And what would they be willing to take on? So from tough questions to a tougher decision, what's the most important thing to sustain within a program? And that's only something that you guys could decide upon after you do this kind of assessment and exploration. If you're in a more urgent phase, I mean, if you're talking like 1-2 months down, you have no plans in place, you're starting to worry, you could always apply for a no-cost extension. I've had to do this myself as a program administrator. I've cut minimal all funding and applied for no-cost extension to try and keep people employed and give us a little bit more time to explore sustainability. If you're working in a federal grant, you could also, we never talk about this, ever, but you can apply or talk to your project officer about a grantee-generated supplemental funding. Nobody ever talks about this, ever. But almost every federal entity has this opportunity to fund somebody in a non-competitive way. So talk to your project officer about a grantee-generated supplemental funding opportunity. Scale down what you're doing, right? Especially if you're going to be applying for a no-cost extension, you want to stretch those monies. So scale back what you're doing. And basically what you're doing is reserving money to keep your staff employed, in all honesty. This might be where you start to co-facilitate programs with other departments, hand it off completely, especially in those situations where you discovered overlap and you have interest, you can just hand it off completely. And you can always go to the tribal council to seek emergency support. You know, and that might be in the way of like, we just need $3,000 to exist for another month. We might need $10,000 for 3 months. We just need a little bit more time to wrap things up and hand it off in a good way. Plan, 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 plan. You've got your work plan. I think sustainability activities should be written into your work plan. You can also create a sustainability plan. This is just a real rough example of things you could write into a sustainability plan. You can also add timelines. But I personally think if you write these things into your project work plan, then you are doing sustainability activities. I'm not a huge fan of adding more work to people's workload, so I wouldn't create a sustainability plan separate. I really wouldn't. We're small staff, small resources. If you're a huge tribe with huge programs and more staff, then have at it. But I just think we can incorporate everything into our existing project work plans. Take-home messages: plan, diversify funding, make sure you're delivering high-quality program, and that you get support from the community. There are some strategies to do that, some quick tips. Sorry, Adriana, I went over a little bit. But I'm going to hang around if you guys have any questions. If you have any comments, I'm certainly available. And I want to thank you all for sticking with me for that hour presentation.
Thank you so much. So you shared a couple things that I wasn't even aware of, and I've been working in this arena for about 20 years. The specific funding that they can continue from the funder. Never heard that term, ever. So that's something for us to be aware of as well. And for those of you that have access to your tribes and your tribal council for support, I would encourage you to share, the impact and the process, as well as lessons learned, feedback from your youth, feedback from elders. That's really powerful to share. So keep that in mind. Even if you put together, one slide that talks about a couple really impactful quotes, some photographs or images from your programmatic work, as well as your posters or role model stories that you created. I definitely think that speaks volumes, and it can tell a story in a very short amount of time. And if, of course, you need any support in doing that, or you'd like to discuss this option further, CRIB is always here to help you and support you in that work. I often ask for help from Robert free of charge, and he's very gracious with his input and stuff. So definitely think about the ideas and pieces that Robert shared that might be helpful to you right now. Or if you need to, have a work group and talk about it and figure out what your next steps might look like, feel free to reach out to us at a later date. I'm still working with the same department and am available through email and phone. And I'll be working with you all to wrap up this funding stream, as well as the progress reporting and final reporting. And I definitely feel like I communicate with you all on a pretty regular basis. But yeah, I think Robert shared a lot of really key pieces that we can take away and try to reformulate the work that we've been doing in a sustainable way that maybe it's a little bit more limited or structured than the project that we're doing that might require less time or less funding. So I would encourage you to give that some further thought. And there's a couple of thank yous for Robert, and just thank you all for taking the time to listen and participate. We do have another session coming up next week, and I'll send out the reminders for those. There's 2 more sessions, one by Elton Naswood and one by a woman named Cheyenne. So keep an eye out for those reminders. And again, thank you, Robert, for your time and for your dedication to our work. I appreciate you. So I'll sign off now, and then I will send out the recording probably early next week. So keep an eye out for that, and then reach out if you guys have any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Robert, if you don't mind staying on the line, I have a question for you about the recording.
Not a problem.
Thanks. Okay, so at this point, I just press stop recording and then it will generate the recording process, right?